Hey everybody, John Lorden here. Welcome to another episode of JohnnyVlogs for today, October 2nd, 2017. I have been watching the news all weekend, looking for any updates on Daniel Nations. We do have some. It's not quite the big breakthrough or answer to the big question that I was hoping for. Is he linked to what happened in Delphi, Indiana? But we are getting some better insight from people that have bumped into him in the past. Before we get started with that, I have to first thank the new supporters of the channel, starting with someone that sent me funds through PayPal, Jennifer Walker. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I truly appreciate it. Also, Landis Media Limited did the same thing, sending me funds through PayPal. If you want to do that, you can send those to the email address john@lordenarts.com. It's that simple. But on top of that, of course, my wonderful Patreon supporters also kicked in. Danielle Higgins is now pledged on Patreon. Thank you, Danielle. Anita Squires is also pledged. Hi, Anita. And Rob Boss also pledged on Patreon. Thank you so much for the support to Rob and all of my former patrons. You guys are amazing. Can't do it without you guys. We've had that talk many times on this channel. Let's get started with a quick look at a new mugshot, and there's been several other mugshots that have kind of fallen out over the weekend, but this one in particular seems to be catching some buzz. I've heard about it from a few of you brain scratchers out there, and a quick thank you to everyone that was keeping me updated on this case over the weekend. A lot of people think that this mugshot in particular is a much better comparison to the composite photo. He's a little heavier in this mugshot, so you can see that kind of the jowls that they had drawn into the composite photo, those weren't really there on the other mugshots where his face is thinned out. But for this particular mugshot, you can see the jowl line, the jawline, and a little bit of jowls is kind of happening around his chin area. I believe that this mugshot is also from February, the same month as the Delphi killings. So this might be very close to how he looked if he is indeed the Delphi killer, I guess we'll call him. Jumping over to WTHR.com. Man who did business with Daniel Nations recalls alleged threats. And basically that's been the big thing that's happened this weekend. Is a lot of stories are coming out from people that have dealt with Daniel at some point in the past. And the stories are certainly supporting the thought that he threatens people, particularly with a hatchet, time and time again. On this particular case, the man who asked not to be identified said he got to know Nations last spring. He said Nations could be polite, quote, except for the threats, he said. The man said Nations threatened to kill him. It was only a few months ago after the man evicted Nations from one of his rentals. And that's another common theme you're going to hear if you look into these stories of people that have interfaced with them. Most of these people were coming from a very good place in their hearts, trying to help him out, in many cases giving him a place to stay. And it seems like after he had been there for a while that he just acts up. He kind of turns on them. Bad things seem to happen around those people that they think might be tied to him. But let's continue here. He said he just wanted to give the guy with the troubled past a break, but it didn't work. Quote, I don't like violence, and following that case really makes me hurt, he told us. Knowing that he might be linked really hurts me a lot more because I put them under my roof, around my kids. It won't be a good feeling if he is linked to that. This article also has another interaction with a woman pictured down here who doesn't hide her identity. She comes right out in this video interview. But in particular, she mentions the clip of the voice of the Delphi suspect saying down the hill. And in this quote, I listened to the down the hill over and over, and yes, it sounds like his voice. And the way he carries himself in the picture, that's how he carried himself. You know, you always have to take that type of info with a little bit of a grain of salt, but we don't have a recording. We haven't heard his voice at all publicly. So, I mean, we have for the Delphi suspect, but not for Daniel. So we don't really have a good way to compare that. So in this case, I think we should definitely at least listen to what this lady has to say about his voice possibly being a match there. Jumping over to the IndieChannel.com, we're going to hear about another interaction. Former boss recalls Daniel Nation's temper. A woman who employed Daniel Nation says he had the type of temper that could change at a moment's notice and violent tendencies. She said her and her husband hired Nations in the spring of 2015 to help on their cattle farm, but things started to go south after he took one of their trucks to Columbus and was caught peeping and pleasuring himself in a woman's restroom at Rickers. Daniel's former boss said he then quit his job and came back, quote, in a fit of rage. He went after my husband with a hatchet, she said. He liked to intimidate people. When you put it together, she's talking about the photos. When you put it together, it looks sort of close to him, says his former boss. If he is the person who did this, I want him to have to pay for it. I can't agree with that anymore. And of course, what did happen officially at the end of last week's BrainScratch, which by the way, I'll have in the description box below in case you didn't see it. I was very confused at the media that was coming out. We had one article say he was a person of interest, another article saying, no, he was not a person of interest. Quotes from Indiana State Troopers saying, we're just going to treat this like any other lead. I don't know if that's necessarily the case because we found out over the weekend they went out to Colorado fairly quickly. Indiana State Troopers have traveled to Colorado. State Police Sergeant Kim Riley says at least 2 troopers arrived Friday in Colorado to investigate whether 31-year-old Daniel Nations could be a suspect in the killings of 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams. Riley says authorities should know by next week whether the Indiana man is a viable subject in the killings. And once again, I don't know if there is a DNA profile on the Delphi killer. I've heard rumors that there is, but I have not seen anything solid on that. This statement that they should know by next week if he's a viable subject, that's a pretty interesting tight time frame to me. That might lead us to believe that perhaps they have a DNA profile. Maybe they're going to test him against it, because you have to figure if they don't have a DNA profile, they're going to need to put a whole case together. They're going to need to find physical evidence, perhaps testing the hatchet for some type of DNA material, perhaps getting him to crack under interrogation, looking for some type of confession. You can't put a little 1-week time frame on how some of those aspects of investigation go. But if you know that it's simply a DNA test and you know that it takes, 2 or 3 days for the lab to get back to you, you can put a bit of a tight time frame on it. So I'm hoping, but this is just my opinion, let's keep that clear. I'm hoping that them talking about it in this way means that they have a test that they're going to run. Perhaps it could be voice print analysis. We know that they've got some recording of the Delphi suspect. They have Daniel in custody. If they can get his voice print, maybe they could do some kind of comparison there to see if he's even close. And if that's close, maybe that'll make him a viable suspect, and then they can continue searching for more evidence. But I'm really hoping that it's DNA testing that they're doing, but we do not have that confirmed. And finally, over at denver.cbslocal.com, just talking about the investigators going out to Colorado. They want to interview Daniel Nations with the key question to answer: was he in Indiana when Liberty German and Abby Williams were killed on Valentine's Day? Now, some new information that came out since I shot that last BrainScratch tells us we're pretty sure that he was in Indiana. It appears Nations was in Morgan County, southwest of Indianapolis. And here is a quick map that I've pulled up for you guys. Morgan County is down here, southwest of Indianapolis, and Delphi is up here. According to this route, that's only 97 miles, easily a drive that you could do within a few hours. And how do we know that he was in Morgan County? We have a fairly solid source on that. Captain Brent Worth of the Morgan County Sheriff's Department told CBS 4 Indianapolis, quote, he came in on February 7th, 2017, and then he came in on February 14th. and checked in. The last address that he reported was that he was staying under a bridge homeless. Now, what's important about that there's really 2 points. First of all, we definitely have him in Indiana. We know that because he's checking in, because basically, since he doesn't have an address, his parole has been bumped up to weekly, his parole meetings. So he has to come in at least once a week and say, I'm still here. They check in with him. They let him go for the rest of the week. He comes back the following week. What's interesting here is we have him check in on February 7th. We have him check in on February 14th, which is the day after the Delphi murders. And then the following week, he doesn't check in anymore, all of a sudden falls off the radar, and eventually winds up leaving the state. So outside of that, he was reported that he was staying under a bridge. And of course, when we look at the Delphi case, one of the most haunting images of that case is a man walking on a bridge. Was this perhaps a bridge that he was scoping out? Maybe he was already staying at this bridge. It's a bridge that is in a park area, so perhaps that was a better place for him to stay because he wouldn't get harassed as much by police or something, like if he was staying at a bridge that had a lot of traffic around it or something along those lines. I just think there's a lot of things. It would be a heck of a coincidence when you're coupling up all these little tidbits about what's going on with him possibly being related to this case. But this is just another one of those tidbits. Unfortunately, we do see some pretty amazing coincidences in certain cases. We need more than that to really make a judgment call here. So I know that the authorities are working as hard as they can to get a definitive answer on this. I'm hopeful that we'll hear that answer soon, because I'm telling you, this case is just, it's like stuck in the front of my mind right now. I really can't get off it, and I'm hoping that we hear something either way. To either know, okay, he is free and clear of this, he did not have anything to do with the Delphi murders, or to know it looks like we might have our suspect here, but we have more work to do in terms of putting a case together, or the ultimate answer, hey, we have a definitive match. We've got some type of analysis, or we have some type of test, or we have some type of evidence that we can put these two guys together. This is the same person. Ultimately, of course, that's what I'm really hoping for. And I know the families, friends, and many people in this country and probably around the world are hoping for the same thing, so that we can have some justice come into the Delphi murders case for those two little girls. So that's it, guys. That's about all the stuff that shook out over the weekend. Of course, I'm going to keep my eye on this case. Any other big updates on this, I'll probably just go ahead and kick on the camera and shoot out videos on those as soon as they happen. But I'm hoping for the big news to drop at some point during this week. According to what we heard from Kim Riley, that might actually be the case. So fingers crossed on that. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. I appreciate each and every one of you out there that views, that supports the channel, hits the like button, shares it with your friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all your help. And I hope you are starting off a great week, and come back. I'll see you here tomorrow on the Lord and Arts channel.